Good evening, everyone. This is Yehuda Shamroth from Ramat Beit Shemesh, Rabbi Pinchas Winston, joining us again to talk about all topics related to the Geula Shalema, the end of days that we're in. And he helps us navigate through these times through his beautiful insights and teachings from the Torah, from Kabbalistic concepts, and from current events. Tonight, we're going to hear about Purim Katan. And I just want to say to people, to everyone out there, please join us weekly, and if pass this on to your friends. And if it's the first time you're joining us, we're happy to see you. And if you're just joining us on recording, thank you for listening. And please send comments to Rabbi Windston or myself. You can reach Rabbi Windston at 36.org or sharnunproductions.org. And you can reach me on Facebook at the Miriam Project at Ula Hour. Thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. It is already the 14th of Adar Rishon in Eretz Yisrael, and Chutz La'aretz in America, that side of the world. It's still the day before, but officially it is now what we call Purim Katan. That is what happens in a leap year. The Jewish people, as opposed to the Western calendar. Western calendar is also a leap year this year. We're going to have a 29th day of February. Every 4 years, we add an extra day to February, just one day. But the Jewish people, every couple of years, add an entire month. And we do it at the end of the monthly year, because the Rosh Hashanah of the month is Nisan. And so we add an extra Adar. And that results in Adar Aleph, Adar Sheni, which creates some halachic shalos and questions. Most importantly, what to do about Purim. Because Purim is in the month of Adar, and we are in the month of Adar. So the Gemara asks this question actually, and says, what's more important, to put Purim close to the month of Shvat, because it normally follows the month of Shvat, and do it therefore in the first Adar, not the second Adar, or is it more important to put Purim in the second Adar, Adar Sheni, which is the extra month, and because it's close to Pesach. So the Gemara, has a reason for both possibilities, because we do, and it's a very important issue because it's a little bit counterintuitive from a halachic perspective. Because the concept that we tend to fall back on a lot of times when it comes to mitzvahs is ein marvin ala mitzvahs, meaning that the mitzvah comes to your hand, you do it right away. You don't wait. You don't put it off until another moment in time, because as we all have experienced at some point in our lives, it doesn't always work out that way. A lot of times I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. I'll do it even 15 minutes from now. I've had situations where I'm putting off a mitzvah for 5 minutes only, and something happens in those 5 minutes because there's some angel up in heaven who's got this really strange sense of humor, who, I don't know, somehow gets his hands on the controls, and he just does things, to show you up, to show you that Aiden Marvin on mitzvahs is a real thing, meaning that you should really do mitzvahs as soon as possible. Also, we learn from chametz, that we, just like matzah, you don't let it sit 18 minutes unworked. It's always, constantly using your energy to do it as soon as possible, as fast as possible. Likewise, mitzvahs also, you should do the first opportunity that comes your way. And so the first opportunity that comes our way is tonight. Today would have been Tainus Esther, and we would read the Megillah tonight, and then tomorrow would be Purim. We don't have Purim on Erev Shabbos too often, but it has happened a few times. And then Shabbos is Shushan Purim, which gets pushed out to Sunday, so Mishleshes. So it's, but this will be technically speaking, according to how we normally function halachically, this would be the month of Purim, and the next month would not be the month of Purim, and you'd have an extra month, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it, to clean up all those crumbs, especially from the vafelim, that children run through your house from a mishlach manas, because mishlach manas invariably is very chumistic. And especially if you have small kids, the moment you have small kids, then every room basically is fair game in terms of making a mess and having to clean for Pesach. So you'd have an extra month to clean for Pesach. But it's not going to work out that way, because even though we have this important concept of not pushing off a mitzvah, in this case we do, and obviously you can if there's a good reason to do it, and especially if the rabbis are the ones who sanction it, not you personally because you're being lazy or a little slow. But because halachically there's a reason for it, and the Gemara comes up with an inyan of mesamech geula legeula. that you place one redemption next to another redemption. And since the redemption of Purim is a redemption, and Pesach is about the redemption from Mitzrayim, so we want to put them close together because that, we don't know yet why, but we know that everything we do has a deep reason for it. It's a very significant reason, and there must be something there to think about, to learn about, and to put in perspective, which is why I wrote a book called Redemption to Redemption, based upon this very idea about a leap year and Purim and the whole thing, which I recommend reading if you want to get the fuller picture, because this is part one. We'll do part two, B'ezras Hashem, a month from now, when Purim does come up, and we are going to celebrate the way that we normally do every year. But you should know, there are many people who actually treat Purim Katan like a real Purim, not completely a real Purim. They do Mishloach Manas, they do Matavs of Yanim. They don't necessarily do Mikra Megillah yet, but they do Vasuda. And I've been told that some places you can't even tell the difference between Purim Katan and the regular Purim because they take it so seriously. Is that just because they like to drink? It's fun. Purim is a lot of fun, and it's a hug that people want to get into. So why not do it twice if you can? Or is it something far more spiritual than that, something more important? Like why anyhow did the rabbi, if we're pushing it off anyhow, so why even have Purim Katan? Why that, after this is over, I was actually at my bottle of wine, my glass of wine here right next to me, and drink it while I was giving this shir, but a little bit worried about what I might do, the way I speak. So I'll save that for after the shir, B'ezras Hashem. But I plan to have somewhat of a Suda on Purim Katan, because it is a special opportunity if you understand what's going on. And you have to understand what's going on. Purim is not, even though it's a drinking feast, but, Kabbalistically, it is probably the holiest holiday that we have. Not even probably. I have to use the word probably, because again, it's so not what we're used to saying and thinking that, you just slip it in there because you feel uncomfortable saying what seems to be the opposite of what people think. Yom Kippur, right? Yom is the holiest day of the year for sure. But according to Kabbalah, according to Medrash, and Kabbalah, that all the holidays correspond to different periods in the future. The reason why they're only holidays now is because Pesach acts as a light, and always does every year, that belongs to the future, to Yemos HaMashiach, to the Messianic year, as does Sukkot, as does Shavuos, as does Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. All these holidays are like portals to another period of time. Hanukkah is the Messianic year for sure, and the last holiday, and so what happens basically as we go into history, and we reach those periods of time, and the light becomes, like for example, right after Mashiach comes, and the war of Gog and Magog is over, and all the bad guys are gone, and the evil's finished. There's no more Yetzer Hara anymore. It's literally the ask, because we're already in Yemos HaMashiach now. Clear, we are already in Yemos HaMashiach now. But this stage of the Messianic era still allows for evil, still allows for Yetzer Hara, for a lot of things, because it's a development process. But when we finally get to that period of time that we all dream of, that more utopian period of aspect of Yemos HaMashiach, so then Hanukkah will be every day. You won't need a special 8-day holiday called Hanukkah to access the light of Hanukkah, because that light, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is going to shine every day, which is why the Yetzer Hara will be gone. Evil will be gone, because there's no room for evil in the world with that light shining all the time. So that'll be the first one to go. And then later on, in the end of Yemos HaMashiach, which is already in tghe and Mesim, the resurrection of the dead. We're still talking before 6,000. On this side is 6,000. So it's all part of Olam Hazeh, this world. So Rosh Hashanah will be every Monday, and every Tuesday will be this, and every Wednesday and Thursday or Sukkot, and every week Pesach will be every Sunday, right? Because Chesed, and without the cleaning, without the Seder, without all that, because we do those things now to be able to prepare ourselves to be able to access that future light. But when you're living without a Yetzer Hara, and you don't have there's no chumetz anymore in the world. There's no chumetz. There's no Yetzer Hara, which is the chumetz in the person. So that's all gone. So you can experience Pesach without having to go through all the preparation, of getting for Pesach. We just like took a big collective sigh of relief to find that out. But in the meantime, this year you have to probably still clean for Pesach. And then comes 6,000, and we begin the world to come. From 6,000 to 7,000 is going to be Yom Kulu Shabbos. The Kedusha Shabbos will be every day. So you won't even need Shabbos anymore, starting with 6,000, because every day will be of the quality of Shabbos. And then, but you'll still have Yom Kippur, because that's not going to go until 7,000. We're ascending. All the worlds are ascending, and now we're going up to the level of Bina in the spheres, which is very high up and very spiritual. We're not really physical anymore like we are today at this point. And then Yom Kippur will stop being a holiday, because every day will have the quality, the Kedusha, the holiness of Yom Kippur, but you'll still have Purim. Purim is going to be the last holiday to go, and that's why it's Yom Kippurim, right? Which means a day like Purim, and it sounds like just one of these interesting plays on words, but no, it's literal. Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur is actually less than Purim itself. Not right now. I mean, it should be right now, but it's not, because of where we're holding, where our mentality is holding right now, how we look at the world. Famous Gemara where Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Shimon Levi, has a near-death experience. He dies and comes back. And his father says, welcome back, Shalom Aleichem, what'd you see on the other side, right? So he says, an upside-down world. I saw a world where what's up over here is down over there, and what's down over here is up over there, meaning that, his father says to him, no, you didn't see an upside-down world. You saw the world the way it's supposed to be. This is the upside-down world. We're walking on the ceiling over here, and we think it's the floor, so to speak. So he's, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, then that changes everything, which means that our perspective is very upside down, and has been ever since we left the Garden of Eden, ever since we ate from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, which is the problem of mixing up good and evil together as one thing, going from the level of true, emes for sheker, truth and falsehood, down to the level of only good and evil. It's a long story, and it's tied to Purim. All of it's tied to Purim, but finally at 8,000 to 9,000, that's when Purim will stop being a special day, and that corresponds to the sphere of Chachma, which is mind-boggling, literally mind-boggling, when you consider what that means, if you understand what that means, especially given how we celebrate Purim. If ever there was anything upside down in life, in the world, it's the way we celebrate Purim, given what Purim actually is and what it's meant to be. But that's the world. That's history. Just look at the insanity all around us, all over the place. It's just, we're crazy. The world's crazy, and somehow you try to maintain some level of sanity and function, and that's why we have Torah. Because if it wasn't for Torah, boom, we'd be completely off the deep end. Everybody. But at least with Torah, it's an anchor in reality. It's God sharing His perspective enough that we can kind of like reach at and grab a little bit of it. But I'll just tell you, in my travels and my experiences, I have sometimes walked away with mouth open and absolute shock to see how many different variations there were of Yiddishkeit and Frumkeit. I don't mean between Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. I mean within the Orthodox world itself, how much people were able to rationalize things into their frum way of life that is like, that doesn't belong there. That shouldn't be like that. That's not who we are, but that's the way they were, and that's the way we all do things. We're all doing it on some level in our own personal way, because it's an upside down world. And that's why the central part of Megillus Esther is Nafachu. I mean, the whole story of Purim, excuse me, is how everything just got turned upside down, but didn't get turned upside down. It got turned right side up. And one of the best ways to express this is like little, I mean, this is beautiful. I mean, there's so many connections. We can't go through all that right now, but just like, meandering through the information to try to make a point out of all this as part of accessing the light that's coming down right now on Purim Katan. Purim Katan is Purim Katan because it's Purim. Today is actually Purim. We push it off. We can't have two Purims. I'd like to have two Purims, and some people kind of insist upon it. But the real Purim, halakhically, to fulfill the mitzvah is later on. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity. A window is not opened up tonight. In fact, if anything, this is the night that it will open up, and on Shabbos too, because of Shushan Purim, because of the fact that this is usually when Purim is supposed to be celebrated, if we go by the idea of not passing a mitzvah when it comes to your hand. We just happen to have this idea of putting Purim close to Pesach because we need it. In order to be able to do Pesach properly, we need it. And it's like someone like who wears glasses, right? If you take off your, when you're born, you got great vision. I mean, for the first 25, 30 some odd years of your life, you may never need glasses. You can read small things and large things. Your eyes are just in good shape, 20/20, and there's no problem. Then you start getting older, or maybe there's a defect in your eyes, something like that, and your vision starts to get weaker. All of a sudden, you can't see things so far away anymore or so close up. As much as you squint and you try and you hold it, like do this with your eyes, and it doesn't work. And then you put on a pair of glasses, and all of a sudden you can see again because the glasses are custom designed to your eyes to make up for what's missing. So the same thing is true as time went on in history, our vision of Pesach got weaker. We don't understand what Mitzrayim means and what it means to leave Mitzrayim. Not that we ever really did, because we never did it quite right. But nevertheless, we still have to go through the Haggadah and try to achieve freedom. And in order to be able to do that, we need hachana, we need preparation. So Purim is supposed to be that preparation. It's very much tied to Pesach in the story itself. This is why it's in the second month, but doesn't change the fact that this is also part of the reality of Purim. So having said that, I want to put into perspective the events of what took place. I'm going to share something in a second, a diagram, a drawing. Before I get there, I just want to explain something that I actually saw again recently, in fact, just yesterday, but it's very relevant to this topic as well. And it's talking. The topic is about leaving Mitzrayim, and specifically about how that God only. Well, look at the Chumash. The Chumash, the Jewish people were enslaved altogether for 116 years, but it got worse from Miriam's birth. Apparently, after Miriam was born, which is why her name is Miriam, because of Zamar is bitter, right? That's when it started to get really bad. About 86 some odd years, and you can be sure, but people were complaining. I mean, it was terrible, destructive slavery. It was not the kind of thing. It's like, hi dear, how was your day at work today? Oh, it's not so bad. People drive me nuts, but other than that, it's fine. And you go to bed. And, it wasn't that type of a thing. It was slavery, real slavery. So you can be sure that people were crying out all the time and complaining and wishing that it would end and wondering why it hasn't. And God, of course, is everywhere at all times. So all of a sudden, it says that, they cried out, the beginning of Parshas Bereshis, they cried out, God, heard their crying out and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov to take out the Jewish people eventually from Mitzrayim, and then did it. And then, sent Moshe down, began the process. It took a whole year to a year and a half, really, and to get things going and get them out of Mitzrayim. But what happened in the meantime? Why did it take so long? Why did it take 116 years? Why didn't at the beginning of the slavery? Why didn't God hear it back then? They weren't crying out loud enough yet. Weren't poor forms of communication back then. Technology. No, it's like God heard the entire time. So why not? So the Sefer explains that before any nation can be brought down, there's historical processes going on. There's Kabbalah, sparks being elevated. It's a big story. A lot that most people don't even have any awareness, and they're just kind of like a second on a movie set, just walking back and forth, doing their thing, having no idea what role they're playing in the entire thing. And And then there's some special, unique individuals who understand what's happening and the opportunity and how to bring it out of themselves, bring it out of other people. But whatever the reason is that a nation has to exist for a certain period of time before that nation will go down, before that nation will be conquered or collapse or whatever. Like Rome, for example, lasted 500 years and then collapsed. Then, not 300 years ago, not 200, but at that time. Why did it collapse specifically? Well, historians will tell you that they began to become, rotten to the core, and they were like literally, falling apart on the inside. So it was almost like a hollow shell in the end. So just had to, come and attack from the north, which the Mongols did and then conquered. But eventually it divides up into other empires. And again, same thing with Nazi Germany, that for a while it was going over a decade. It was building, getting stronger, and there was all kinds of reasons to stop it earlier, but we didn't, and the world didn't. And as a result of that, there was World War II, and of course, there was the Holocaust. And this goes on all through history, and today you have Russia, and you have China, and you have Iran, and like, why is Iran collapsing? Why is Iran prospering? Why is Hamas still at war with the Jewish people? Still have the hostages? Why is this going on? So everything that takes place down here first takes place up there. Every nation has a ministering angel. Every nation has a sar, whether it's Edom, whether it's Ishmael. Every nation, because it's an angel whose job is to look after his people or their people, whatever, and to funnel whatever is necessary to keep that nation alive, to function and do what it's there to do in history. God has a purpose for everything. No one's there unnecessarily. As long as something's necessary, it will be there. The moment it stops being necessary, it won't be there anymore. But it's all first orchestrated in Shemayim. So the Sforim explain that God heard them the entire time, but Egypt was at a stage of history where it was not meant to collapse yet. But the moment that we reached this point in history where Egypt had to go, it was finished. It had done what it was in the world to do. So then its sar, its angel, was weakened in Shemayim, and the weakening of the angel is reflected in the weakening of the people below. And eventually, when the angel is, can be destroyed even sometimes, then that nation will also be completely destroyed. If it's only weakened, then the nation will be weaker. If it never gets back any strength, it'll always be weaker, and it'll just have once been a powerful nation, but not anymore. That's why Rome collapsed when it did. That's why Egypt collapsed when it did, what the Jews went out when they did, and why other nations are still here this very day. So the same thing is true, that the Jewish people, they, Nebuchadnezzar sent Nebuzaradan, they came and destroyed the base of Mikdash. They were on the rise. Bavel, that part of the world, Media, Persia, Kasdim, whatever you want to call them, they're all on the rise. Their angels were building up. This, by the way, is the reason why Esther makes 2 sudas, because she realized that Haman's on the rise, which means that his malach, who's responsible for him, is also becoming more powerful in Shemayim. And what she does very cleverly is she gives him all this covet to make him rise even faster, right? And as a result of that, he can collapse even sooner, which he did. And this is probably all part of Mordechai's plan, and also as well. But this is what's going on in history. So we know it was prophesied that by Daniel, Yeshai, Yirmiyahu, they all spoke about 70 years that the exile, the first exile, the Jewish people, since getting to Eretz Israel, building the base of Mikdash, it would last 70 years altogether. And the whole story revolves around these 70 years. When did they begin? It's a mystery. When did they begin? So when did they end? And all these kings, they're all afraid of it. And the Jewish people are all wondering, it's amazing how this is such a mystery, such a simple thing. Now, after it was all said and done, and the Purim story took place, so then we knew exactly when it began. But in the meantime, there were different points. In fact, there's according to the Gra, there was 2 sets of 70 years. One that began earlier, one that began later. It's a little bit of a long story, but this concept of 70. Now, of course, 70 is a hugely important idea because 70 shows up all over the place. Aside from here, in the 70 years that Abraham did Bris Benasarim at that time, and 70 is the gematria of Yayin and Sod and secrets, and 70 elders for the Sanhedrin. 70 is Das. 70 is a hugely important number in Kabbalah and in Judaism in general, and so 70 is obviously significant, and this plays a major role in the whole episode, the whole story of the Babylonian exile, which is followed by the Median exile, who conquers them, and then eventually we go free in the 70th year, and we build the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, and even though everything looks as if, well, it just happened to happen that way, but it's not true. And I'm just going to put up a little drawing over here. 1 second. Share screen. Share screen. Oh, how do I do this now? Well, I thought this was easy. 1 second. Share screen. Wow. Where is it? Okay. Click the screen icon. Your browser has blocked your screen. My browser has blocked my screen. Okay. I won't be sharing this drawing right now. Maybe I'll figure out by next week, next time as Rosh Hashem. But basically, the 70 years are broken up into two periods of time, 52 years and 18 years. Now, why is 52 so significant? Because at 52 years, that's when, well, it was really 51, but 52nd year, it was that's when Cyrus or Koresh actually, he allowed the Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt. Now, he allowed Jews to go back to Israel a little bit earlier than that, 3389, really 3387 corners, that they went back and they started to resettle the Yishuv again in Israel. It had sparks of Geula. And for 51 years, we were in Bavel with no hope of any redemption, waiting for the 70 years to come up. All of a sudden, Koresh conquers, becomes Persia conquers Bavel, Kasdim, and they take over. And Koresh, according to the Gemara in Megillah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts a ruach of Mashiach ben Yosef into Koresh. Now, he's not Jewish. He's a Gentile leader who probably was not so crazy with the Jewish people as they rarely ever are, especially back at that time. But for some reason, he had this ruach in him. Hashem put it in him, to showing you how Hashem controls the minds and the hearts of leaders. And he says, anybody who wants to go back to Eretz Israel and begin construction of the Beis Hamikdash can do that. And 42,000 Jews respond to the call, not more, which is a very, very sad, it's a pittance of what could have gone back, and which is one of the reasons why Hashem later rescinds it. But Achashverosh, who's only a son of Koresh at that time, he's the one who, I didn't realize this until recently, he rescinds it. But at least the foundation of the Beis Hamikdash was built at 52 years. Then we go 18 years, and they have the big feast in Shushan. It takes place over quite a few years. And the whole story of Mordechai, and that's where the Megillah begins. And then eventually at the 18th year, in the 70th year, that's when Haman rises to power, 70 psukim in Megillah's Esther. It took 70 days for him to rise and then fall. Again, the number 70. and then, in 3408, which is exactly 70 years from the time the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we have the Purim miracle, and then the Jewish people are fighting. Daryavish, which is the son of Achashverosh and Esther, now allows the Jewish people to go back completely to Eretz Israel to begin the second commonwealth of the Jewish people at that time under the second Beis Hamikdash. We never get back the same level of kedusha and miracles. We don't even have the Arna Kodesh in the second Beis Hamikdash, and later on Herod fixes it up and renovates it. Makes it a beautiful place, but it never really quite. There's a votive going on there, but never really becomes the same level. But still, it was a step along the way. Why 52 and why 18? It would just seem random, except for we find a very similar situation, interesting enough, And that is that Avraham is born in 1948 from creation, which is 1813 BCE, I believe. Right? And in his 52nd year, right, of living, right, which is year 2000. Now, history, according to the Gemara, is divided into 3 periods of time. 2,000 years of Tohu, which, because there's no Torah in the world at that point, other than, from starting towards the end of that period of time. Then it comes 2,000 years of Torah, which includes the giving of Torah Mount Sinai, and then comes to 2,000 years of Avich Mashiach, the footsteps of Mashiach, which is from 4,000 until 6,000, which we're now 5784, well into that last period of time. But the second period of time, now 2,000 is ushered in by Avraham himself in his 52nd year of life. And that's when it says he was making souls in Haran. That's the year he was doing that. So that's why it becomes officially the turnover point. Now, just before that, in 1996, from creation, they're building Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Babel. And Avraham was like, not for me. I'm not interested in that at all. And then, of course, comes a dispersion. But Avraham is doing his thing, making souls in Haran. And he starts doing Kiruv and all that. And eventually, the climax is going to be the giving of Torah at Mount Sinai. And eventually, during this period of time, there's going to be a building of the Beis Hamikdash, the first Beis Hamikdash, and then the second Beis Hamikdash also as well before the closeout of the second 2,000 years. And so 52 years until 2000, and then 18 years until the 70th year when Hashem makes the Bris B'nai Basari. So actually, the year 2000, his 52nd year, corresponds to the building of the foundation, at least, of the second Beis Hamikdash. Same idea, same kedusha, same holiness. Just as a side point, it's very fascinating that the Jewish state, the modern state of Eretz Israel, was founded according to the Western count in 1948 as well. That's quite a coincidence, and there's a lot of numbers in the universe, and the fact that those two numbers should overlap like that is pretty interesting hashgacha pratis, to say the least. And of course, the 52nd year was 2000 with Y2K. And for those who remember Shurim from way back when, why Y2K was so significant from a hashgacha point of view, from a geula point of view. And of course, last 18 years, 2018. Without going there right now, but it's just like there's this 52 and 18, 70 year type of thing, very much tied to Purim. And what's even more interesting is the basis of all of it is Bris Milah. And that's another diagram I had hoped to show you right now, but I'm not going to play around with it anymore for the time being. But it all has to do with lights. Everything is lights. Lights going on, lights going up, but not physical lights, not the ones in your house, not the ones in your car, not the ones in your office. Spiritual lights, because everything in the whole world runs by spiritual lights. The reason why this is Purim Katan, the reason why we're talking about Purim, the reason why, for me personally, the moment that night came in tonight, you felt something different. Now, of course, there is the psychological reality of knowing this is Purim Katan, but there's lots of times when the psychological reality was not enough to move me, was not enough to make me feel some type of burst of inspiration. Yeah, I know, you get excited about something, but it's something deeper than that. It's something like you feel some kind of connection taking place on this day to a light, to a special reality that's not there all year round. It's a different type of light on other holidays. So, what exactly is it? So it turns out that it mimics the whole process of redemption from the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash until Koresh letting us to go, letting us go back and begin rebuilding rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash, and then finally the Gula and Abraham. It's all part of the same idea, all part of the same concept, and that is there's a problem. There's a problem in creation, and the problem in creation is that there's only one source of energy for everything, for good and for bad. If somebody wants to use their car to deliver food or clothing or whatever to needy people and do a big mitzvah, they require gasoline. If somebody wants to go do a terrorist attack, God forbid, Rahman Islam has just happened today, right? And they need to drive, they also require gasoline. It's the same gasoline. They might even fill up at the same pump that the person who's doing the mitzvah is filling up from. It's the same type of gas. There's no two gas stations in the end. We're all fighting for the same sparks. And what happens is that the more, how does evil grow? How does evil become stronger? How does like, Persia, Iran today and China and all these, they don't consider themselves to be the bad guys. They consider themselves the good guys and look at us as the bad guys. So I would know who's who. That's what the Torah is for. The Torah is the standard. The Torah tells you what man is supposed to look like. Without the Torah, it's just an opinion. My opinion, their opinion, everyone's got an opinion. But once we have the Torah as the standard to tell us what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, so then you can start making comparisons. So we see, nations and people taking advantage of the people, doing what seemingly is immoral, not right. And how do they get to do that? Where's the power coming from that? And how do they get away with it? Well, they're people with bodies and they have energy and need food. No, but that's the cover story. That's what we see in the outside. It's the inside story. It's the nsgates. It's the holy sparks. It's God's light and energy, because it's all God's light. There's nothing but God's light. Even the Satan, the Sitra Achra, it's God's light. Whatever he's doing, he has to do with God. There's no two lights. There's a way to abuse that light, and God even allows it for the sake of free will, but you have to pay for it later on. I mean, he doesn't suffer for it in any way. We suffer for it in the end, but it's all part of God's light. So, this is what gives the Sar and Shemayim, for example, his power, and he transfers that power down to his people to do whatever they're going to do down on earth, however it looks and appears from a historical point of view. But basically, it's all the same idea. And Bris Milah represents this concept where until the orla, the foreskin, is removed, right? Lights. And this is we exercise. We do things physically in the physical world, in a physical way, but because of the symbolism, not just symbolism, because of the meaning that God has attached to these particular physical acts, they have impact on the spiritual world. So, for example, the foreskin that is removed through the mitzvah of Milah is considered to be something that's impure, that allows the klipos, the side of evil, the side of the negative side of creation, to access holy light and become stronger to do evil. So therefore, conceptually and in reality, we have to limit how much kedusha we allow out into the open. And God does the exact same thing with his lights. He will hold back lights in heaven, in Shemayim. Now we all price for that. We all suffer as a result of that, meaning that without that light, I'm also limited. I'm also not going to be able to accomplish too much spiritually. But at least evil will also be kept at bay. So what do? We perform Bris Milah. We do a not a medical procedure, but a spiritual procedure. And it requires, two parts, Milah and Priya. And we cut the foreskin and we remove it and the membrane and the whole thing and get rid of it. We even bury it, get rid of the thing itself, which has tumah attached to it, has spirit attached to it. And once we've done that, so even though the physical world doesn't seem to change that much, but God will work with that physical reality. Now that the Bris Milah has been performed, lights that previously would not have come down because it would be subject to abuse by evil can now come down because they're protected by the fact that Bris Milah was performed. And it turns out in Kabbalah that the lights that we're talking about are 7 lights, but it's also in 2 stages. There's 52 lights and there's 18 lights. So the first stage is the lights, the 52 lights. They have to come down. They have to come down into creation. Now it's represented by the sphere of Yesod, and that makes it a little bit clearer. But this is the idea. And then there's 18 lights that are even higher up. And when those 18 lights are allowed to come down, because the act of Bris Milah has cleared away the evil, as a result of that, they join up with the 52 lights and become 70 lights, at which time you can have redemption. I'm skipping a lot of steps in between, but Bris Milah, okay, I hear the numbers, they match up, but but what's going on over here? Like, how is this tied back to Purim? So in a sense, think about this. In a sense, this is what Mordechai is doing. This is what Mordechai and Esther, but Mordechai specifically is doing. In a sense, he is performing bris milah on creation, on the Jewish people. How is he doing that? It's not, and this is why Amalek is so against bris milah, and Hitler, Yamashma B'Zichar, was so against bris milah, because bris milah is the concept that we're always using for our life. It's symbolic in terms of physically initiating a young boy into the Jewish people, but it represents the whole concept of the Jewish people in general being initiated to the world and protected from evil, which is what we want to do. So Mordechai understood that as long as Haman was walking around the world, as long as he was in the world, that was God's way of saying it's like the oil is still there. Like he's compared in a sense to the foreskin, meaning that he is the basis to feed the side of evil with holiness. So Mordechai knew as long as that's the case, the lights of redemption cannot come down. They won't come down, and time is running out. He also knows that God knows this too. And not only does God know, but God wants the redemption. So he's triggering things, he's making things happen a specific way. Things like all of a sudden history has changed, sometimes for reasons we can't understand, to inspire us, to elevate us, to make us say, whoa, wait a second. What's going on, and why is this going on? Where's this guy come from? Menuchan, he was a barber, and now become a second in command. He wants to, genocide, and why? Like that's from God. He's waking us up, saying it's time to perform bris milah on history, to get rid of the klipos, to get rid of the Amalek, to get rid of those that are evil, that's stealing kedusha from the Jewish people and using it for selfish and hedonistic things and destroying the whole purpose of creation. It's time that's got to go, because until that goes, you're stuck in galus, because the light you need to get out, it's not going to be there. So Mordechai, therefore, does whatever he can, in whatever spiritual mode he's operating in, to get rid of Amalek, which is literally like doing bris milah. And once Haman is disposed of, he's hung, and that's why it's a gallows of 50, because 50 corresponds to the Nun Shuri Bina. Tons of symbolism, and then a lot of it, again, in my book, Redemption to Redemption, is all summed up there, more or less. But once he's able to do that, so then the 18 lights that could not come down while Haman was still in the world could come down now. And that results in the 70 of the Geula that we experience through Purim. And that's a major part what's happening right now. I mean, at least in Eretz Yisrael, Purim Katan, and according to Tuva Aretz, it goes after Eretz Yisrael, even though in Chutz La'aretz they're still living, still the 13th of Adar. In China, I guess it's already the 16th of Adar, the 15th of Adar. but this Metzias, this reality, is true today as well. It's true on Purim Katan as well. So, we started this discussion, the conversation, and it has a lot of applications. And maybe as well, Hashem, it will be worth continuing on and explaining in more detail next week. But in the meantime, Purim Katan Sameach, use the opportunity. Don't just let it come and go, but do some Purim stuff on it. Connect up to it. Maybe a glass of wine, whatever. But think about it and put yourself in a position to receive that light, because that's the light that we need to bring down, to bring us to the stage of the Geula Shlema.
Amen. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah. So when this light comes down, and as you explained it many times in the past and again tonight, it's an opportunity for us to connect to that particular moment in time or that particular kedusha of that holiday. I've heard before that it's going to come down whether or not we recognize it and whether or not we actually want it. So, I mean, it comes down anyway, like the light of Pesach, the light of Rosh Hashanah. And so what about the people that don't have their eyes open to it? I mean, how are they affected by it?
The truth is that the way this forum explains, it's not entirely true what you just said back there, that the only time that's really, really true is on Leil Seder. The only time the light comes on anyhow is on Leil Seder. But every other time of the year, you have to do something to bring the light down. If you don't do something to bring the light down, it won't come down. So by Purim and all that, Rosh Hashanah, we do all these schools not because we're trying to bring the light down to the davening, tefillah, and all that. Leil Seder, the night of the Seder, is the only night with a real freebie. That's where he explained it. Which where they asked the question, if that's the case, but it's the one night of all the nights we do the most, right? You have a Haggadah, a Seder. It's a whole process, as opposed to Rosh Hashanah, which is like, dip the apple in the honey, if your schools and all that. And it was like, why? If Pesach is the freebie, why? So they say just to make sure that when opportunity knocks, you're there to answer the door. In other words, if we didn't have the Seder, we'd be doing all kinds of other stuff. We wouldn't be focused. We wouldn't know what to think about. We wouldn't have to think, how to use that light. So to make sure that we're there to receive the light that's coming down anyhow, we have the Seder. But every other time of the year, you have to work to bring the light down. You have to do that. And this is exactly the reason why. Because only Leil Seder is called Leil Shmurim. Right? It's called the night of protection. What's the protection from? Well, we say the enemies, right? But it's not. It's Hashem holding back the klipas, and that's why we can't have chumetz. Not even a little bit, because the chumetz corresponds to the side, the Yetzer Hara, the negative aspects of creation. So we have to keep all of it away because the light's coming down automatically. So we have to keep the place clean, so to speak. The rest of the year, right? We have to make sure that we've done whatever we can to make a safe environment for the lights to come down. Otherwise, it won't come down.
That's interesting. Thank you. And again, give us the date again so we can be prepared and we won't miss it. The date of Purim Katan
is right now. Tonight is Purim for us. For the people who do the 14th, which is those outside Jerusalem, a walled city, is tonight. And for people inside Yerushalayim, then they do Shushan Purim on Shabbos.
Oh, okay.
Except usually gets pushed off to Sunday for the real Purim. They don't do it on Shabbos because of the all the carrying and all that. But Shushan Purim is a reality. Even if we push off Purim until Sunday for those inside a walled city, right? Still, the real day, the 15th, is Shabbos itself. So the light is coming down that day, and you have to an opportunity. So us for all as well, like we have today and Shabbos, tomorrow and Shabbos to be able to access that light.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Rabbi, that's wonderful, and I hope everybody really enjoyed like I did. And please put your comments in the sidebar, and please connect with Rabbi Windston at chardonproductions.org or 36.org. And you can see me on Facebook on Miriam Project Geula Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful week and a great Shabbos, and may our hostages come home safely. And no more funerals of soldiers again anymore every day. It's just Hashem, please help us with that. Thanks, Rabbi. Thanks everybody for joining us.